Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for this Drawdown interview series. I am delighted to be joined today by Dory Larsen with SACE. I personally have a long history with SACE, so I am really glad, Dory, to be talking to you today about your work with SACE and the electric vehicle program. So I would love for you to tell us more about yourself and, of course, the work you do with SACE as we get started.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Erica. My educational background is in public health. I earned a master's degree in public health from the University of South Florida. And I've also been a public educator for over 10 years. While I was teaching, I started doing some grassroots organizing, leading a community fight to stop a development on 75 acres in my hometown. And that kind of taught me the power in people collectively working together towards a shared vision. It also made me realize that while habitat preservation is something I'm really passionate about, it also opened my eyes to the importance of clean energy solutions. And I always tell my boys, like, you don't know what you don't know until you learn it, and then you do better. So that's what brought me into the fold at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, or SACE. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. And I was an intern at SACE a long, long time ago, 2011. So I am familiar with the work that SACE does in general, but maybe our audience would like to know, if they're not familiar with SACE, what SACE is about as an organization as well.
Yeah, so we're a membership organization. We advocate for responsible and equitable energy production and consumption in the Southeast. And we define the Southeast geographically as Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So
Got it.
quite a big footprint in the Southeast.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what brought you to the work in the field of electric transportation specifically? And why are you so passionate about the sector as a climate solution in our region?
Yeah. So what brought me to the work is when I started with SACE in 2017, the industry was like kind of in its infancy. So it's been a lot of fun to grow with the industry. As someone, kind of coming in, I'm really passionate about electric transportation as a climate solution, because it's something that I think we all can relate to. We've all been like stuck in traffic behind a truck or a bus that's just like spewing tailpipe emissions. And we all have that very like visceral response, like our eyes watering, our throat being scratchy. So we all know like how bad fossil fuel burning vehicles make us feel. But not everybody understands that all electric vehicles don't have a tailpipe. So they're not putting those poisonous gases and pumping them out into our communities. But part of that, I think, is by design. So if we think back, like with big tobacco 30 years ago, they sold us on the lie that cigarettes weren't dangerous,
Yeah.
And part of what the fossil fuel industry is doing is selling us on this lie that transportation pollution isn't that bad. If you look at like car commercials, they've got these happy people going to these like pristine forests or, on these adventures. But you're never going to see an ad depicting a child that is in a hospital room in crisis because of an asthma attack, because of, the unhealthy air that she's been breathing on her diesel bus ride to school.
Right.
And you're certainly never going to see imagery that helps our communities understand that it's impacting Black communities and under-resourced communities at far higher rates. So what makes me so passionate about electrifying all of our transportation systems, and I don't just mean passenger vehicles, I mean transit buses, school buses, delivery vans, even like leaf blowers and lawnmowers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is twofold. One is the immediate improvement in air quality, especially for those that are most vulnerable. And two, it's a long-term climate solution to draw down climate pollution that brings a whole host of other dangers like extreme heat that we're seeing this summer,
Yeah.
and rapidly escalating storms and flooding. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love when we have these types of conversations, because we are doing the work of making sure that the movement in and of itself is intersectional in the way that we're talking about, clean energy is not devoid of environmental justice, and the other way around. Like, it has to be connected in the most meaning, if it's going to be its most meaningful and its most impactful, right? So thank you for that, for bringing that to light as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Georgia's outsized influence in the EV transition, given the significant investments being made around manufacturing in the state. So can you talk a little bit about that, and how is it impacting the region from an economic and policy perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, another exciting piece to this story is that in addition to the health and the climate benefits with electric transportation investments, we're also seeing that it's really spurring the economy in Georgia. So over 26,000 new jobs in private sector around electric vehicle manufacturing and also battery manufacturing have happened since November 21, which is when the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed and enacted. So SACE has been tracking several electric transportation indicators. And we actually, our latest version of our report that we do is coming out in the next couple of weeks. And two of the factors that we look at are manufacturing investments and jobs. So we're able to see some long-term trends, and we can say that Georgia is in the undisputed national leader in the electric motor sector. So currently Georgia leads the nation in committed investments and in permanent jobs in EV and battery manufacturing. And that's outpacing every other state in the whole country, including Michigan. So really an outsized impact. This number is crazy. And like I said, we just updated it. So these are through Q2 of 24. $23.2 billion have been invested just in Georgia as a direct result from, like I mentioned, the bipartisan infrastructure law and then the Inflation Reduction Act. And those bills were passed and designed to transition American manufacturing away from polluting fossil fuel vehicles to cleaner, efficient electric vehicles. So we've seen private capital investment from manufacturers like Hyundai, Bluebird, Kia, battery companies like Freyr. It's really a testament to that prioritized electric transportation manufacturing, both at the federal level from the Biden administration and also from Governor Kemp. So one example is the Hyundai plant that I just mentioned, $7.6 billion meta plant, where it's an assembly plant in Elabel. It's projected to create over 2,000 construction and then 8,500 permanent jobs, and where they're going to be building over 300,000 vehicles annually. And then they've also entered an MOU with Savannah Technical College to provide training jobs for related to shop operations, electrical principles, and then also servicing the electric vehicles. So, and there are other similar programs as well throughout the state in Columbus and Augusta technical colleges. So the whole intent is these newly trained workers would then support the growing manufacturing sites. And so it's creating this whole big economic cycle and boom for the state.
That is very surprising. Thank you so much for adding the context around those numbers, because I think that something that we've been saying a lot in this series is there is a misconception that there isn't a lot that we can or are doing around clean energy and climate and environmental justice in this region. And I, as someone who has moved to the South, but not from the South, I am often having conversations with people from other regions, especially from where I'm from up north, that people are very creative and are being very creative with the limits that we have, but also creating opportunities for those limits to be shattered and those stereotypes to be shattered. So I think it's always good for us to hear that those types of numbers are existing in a place like Georgia. And so that's really helpful. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
How is SACE taking action to support e-mobility equity in the Southeast? So we're thinking like, and I'm thinking mostly about the Electric Black Futures project, but if there are other examples of that as well, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I'm excited to share about that program, and then several others that we've kind of got cooking as well. So I'll start with that. But we have the Electric Black Futures program, and we also have our Electrify the South Collaborative. We have our AMP Charlotte program, and then Electric School Bus Work. So let me start with Electric Black Futures. So the program will work in Albany, Atlanta, and Savannah over the next 3 years. And we are partnering with EV Noir and Clean Cities, Georgia, and a host of other local partners to engage Black communities within those 3 Georgia cities to create opportunities for communities to shape their e-mobility future. And it's also designed to inform and support deployment of electric transportation related bipartisan infrastructure bill and Inflation Reduction Acts funds that I mentioned previously, but making sure that they're in line with Justice 40 guidelines. So if listeners aren't really familiar with Justice 40, for the first time in our nation's history, the federal government has made it a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized and by underinvestment, and also overburdened by pollution. So it's a paradigm shift that is really exciting to see that funding like going to communities that are impacted most and need the most support with it. So we're going to work closely with those communities in Albany and Savannah and Atlanta to generate future building coalitions focused on bridging e-mobility workforce and leadership opportunities. And the objective is to strategize and document equitable and innovative transportation systems in those 3 geographies that will better connect Justice 40 benefits to community leaders that are eager to lead technological developments in their areas. So that's the Electric Black Futures program. And that's underway. We also have the Electrify the South Collaborative, which is a partnership with SACE and the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network, or SSDN. So we're working together with local governments to support them in accessing and implementing federal electric transportation funding specifically. So we're convening in-person and virtual meetings that are building capacity through peer-to-peer learning and resource sharing, and also building connections to technical assistance. So part of that work is building local governments' capacity and capabilities to integrate those Justice 40 guidelines into the projects that I mentioned. So that's an ongoing project that we're working on that I've been really engaged in leading, and excited about that. We also have a program called the Affordable Mobility Platform, or AMP, and that is in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's in partnership with Fourth, which is a nationwide organization. So this is the only local project in the Southeast. And what the program will do is provide affordable housing residents access to electric vehicle car sharing and charging. So residents will be able to access a shared car through an app. And then part of the project is also to install charging infrastructure so that they have access to residential charging. But it also will double and be open to the public to support community charging. So we're going to be doing ride and drive events to teach about electric vehicles and charging as the program rolls out. And that's happening in September, October. So that'll be there to make sure that folks are comfortable with the driving, with the technology, and to help make sure that program's a success.
Awesome.
And then we're also doing electric school bus work, which is something that I spend a lot of time working on. So as previously as a public educator, having to spend time on the bus ramp during bus duty and just having that personal experience again of breathing in those fumes and just knowing.
Right. Absolutely.
So we've been collaborating with stakeholders from the Environmental Protection Agency and World Resources Institute, the Alliance for Electric School Buses, Mothers and Others for Clean Air, plus our clean energy generation and tons of other partners to accelerate school bus electrification in the Southeast. So the Environmental Protection Agency has two programs. They have the Clean School Bus Program, which is part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And there's also the Clean Medium Heavy Duty Program. It's meant to actually provide funds for school districts to purchase electric buses. So this is kind of like a first to be able to have that funding to make these really meaningful programs work. But there's so much work to do still to educate superintendents and school board members about the benefits of electric school buses, and about the programs and the funding that's available, but also really making sure that we're prioritizing bus routes to overburdened neighborhoods. So those students in those communities that are most impacted are getting those direct benefits from the program.
Right.
And then the last thing I'll mention is this is more broad. It's not just related to electric transportation equity, but our clean energy generation, which is kind of a double entendre of like generating clean energy, but also generationally working together across generations to create a movement of people that are working together to advocate for clean energy solutions and energy justice. So they're learning together about opportunities and also taking actions. And it's also about storytelling. So like the clean energy generation is highlighting stories like Olivia from Cleveland, Georgia, who has her own solar installation business and workforce center, and she's training workers with diverse backgrounds, or telling the story of Larry, who took the tax credits to implement energy efficiency upgrades. So it really is all about like making sure that we're working collectively to tell those really important stories. So that group meets, the clean energy generation meets virtually on the second Friday of every month. And there's a newsletter that go out, and they do monthly advocacy opportunities. Like this month, they are calling used car dealerships to make sure that they're aware of the federal tax credits, and then giving that information back to a national database so that we're helping to inform consumers about those tax credits and making sure that that opportunity is well known.
So much really great equity work happening in the EV space. I think that's really exciting. I certainly know that there have been many conversations around how are we making sure that underserved communities are in the electric vehicle conversation and in the clean transportation conversation. And there hasn't been, in my opinion, in the past, enough work going on to make sure that it isn't just kind of a more elite or upper class conversation. Because, there were many people that took advantage of the tax credits that were on the books when, EVs were first becoming more popular in Georgia. But certainly there were people that couldn't participate for many different reasons, including income and all these other things. And so I'm really glad to hear that there's intentional work happening to make sure that those communities are not left out from SACE and others. So switching gears a little bit, you co-author the Drawdown Georgia the Drawdown Georgia EV toolkit, electric vehicle toolkit. Tell us a little more about it and why Georgians should take a look.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun to put together. So everybody should stop what they're doing and check it out. But transportation is it's all throughout the Drawdown Georgia material. It's the leading cause of greenhouse gases like being added to the atmosphere. So even like some people think, well, I'm not in a position to buy an electric vehicle right now, so this doesn't apply to me, but it applies to you. So we're all breathing air that's a result of our current fossil fuel based system. So obviously, and like obviously, some are more exposed to others. So if you live nearby a highway, you're more at risk. So it's on all of us to understand the benefits of electric transportation as a solution and be supportive of policies that can rapidly transition us to electric transportation. So even if you're not in the market right now for an electric vehicle, you can use the toolkit to become better educated about the benefits of electric mobility. You can then advocate and let your elected officials know that you support them transitioning the transit buses to electric, the school buses to electric, and the light duty fleet as well. And educate them on the importance of community charging and that there's tax credits to support that work. You can also vote for elected officials that are supportive of clean energy solutions like transportation electrification. But then the toolkit's also useful if you are looking to educate yourself because you're looking to purchase a new vehicle. So it explains all of the kind of baseline things that you would need to familiarize yourself with before you buy an electric vehicle. So it explains the cost of fueling. We also talk in the toolkit about where to charge and how to identify where charging happens, where to find the charging stations using apps, but then also how to charge because it's not all the same. There's level 1 charging that people can do and get their needs met with just a regular outlet. There's community charging, there's level 2 charging, and then there's the fast charging. So it explains like all of those different aspects. And then there's also links to Plug in America, which is a great consumer organization that has tons of information about and resources to help you find the best vehicle for you. You can plug in your zip code and it'll also tell you about incentives that are available locally. So everybody should check the toolkit out.
And that's on the Drawdown Georgia website, everyone. So make sure that you check that toolkit along with the many other toolkits that are on there. But thank you, Dory, for not only explaining to us more about what it's about, but also for creating it and co-authoring it. So what are the, we hear a lot about electric vehicles. We hear a lot about different things, probably some misinformation about them. What are the misconceptions about electric vehicles? We hear about the electric usage, if you're plugging it in at your house, how much electricity are you using in order to charge up, your vehicle? But also I'd love to hear about the pricing of electric vehicles and how, we know that everyone won't be able to buy one or everyone might not be in the market for one or might not be able to afford one. But I know that there have been some opportunities for people to get tax credits and other things. So I'd love to hear if you could help us debunk some of the common misconceptions around electric vehicles in general.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity because to my point earlier, these common misconceptions are actively being pushed by the fossil fuel industry and they're everywhere. Like you see them all over social media, with like a meme that's like so absurd. It makes my head want to explode. So it's important that we have information to be able to push back and to say like, no, this is actually like, these are the facts. Let's make sure we're all speaking accurately. Right. So the one that really gets me is that EVs are just as bad for the emissions as a gas car. Because I think like what annoys me the most about it is they're trying to get folks to feel apathy, that it's not really a good solution or it's not a better solution. So, I mean, obviously there are going to be some emissions from driving electric because you've got to generate the electricity to power the car. Exactly. But there are far fewer emissions than a gas car. And that's because an electric motor is just a lot more efficient. So it's using a lot less energy to go from point A to point B. The Department of Energy publishes emissions data, and it updates that data every year based on how the electricity is being generated. So right now, an EV annually emits 2,446 pounds of carbon dioxide. That's compared to 12,594 pounds with an internal combustion engine annually. So that's 81% fewer emissions annually.
Exactly.
81%.
Right.
Like that is a lot. And
Yeah.
what's also interesting is that when we published Drawdown Georgia, and we looked at Georgia specific data, it was actually 70%. So in the time that we published Drawdown Georgia to today, the energy, because energy generation is getting cleaner as we're moving away from fossil fuels, that makes our transportation systems cleaner as well. So to me, like that's the biggest piece. And that trend's going to continue as we continue adding more renewable energy to our power grid.
Right.
So EVs have much lower life cycle emissions too. So when you're the biggest part of the biggest carbon footprint associated with an electric vehicle is making the battery. That's the most carbon intensive part of its, if you look at the whole life cycle. So because of this, EVs are more carbon intensive until around 15,000 miles. That varies depending on how the battery was made, like where it was made, and also how like the electricity used to power the car. But on average, it's about 15,000 miles in the United States. Then the total carbon footprint, it becomes far less than an internal combustion or gas car. And what's cool is that on average, we have the ability to reduce that battery production footprint by 75% in the next 5 to 7 years. So EVs are clearly a winning solution to reducing climate pollution.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you. So what is your, I'm assuming that I'm making an assumption that you drive an electric vehicle. So what is your favorite thing about driving an electric vehicle?
So for me, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I like driving electric. I say it's like going from like a flip phone to a smartphone. So the instant torque, like when you hit the accelerator, the car takes off and goes. Also, like never having to go to a gas station as a woman, like it's just so much more convenient to not have to do that, to just be able to drive home, plug in, and charge at night while I'm sleeping. And then just the cost savings that are associated with it. It's like a third of the cost of the electricity cost versus gas cost. So it's far cheaper way to fuel your vehicle.
I've also heard that the maintenance is not like there's not as much maintenance. And I guess I'm asking if this is true. Do you find that there's not as much, like, I do drive a gas powered car. I have to go get an oil change every couple of months. I have to do, we have to go get the brakes done. We have to, and I'm sure brakes is always brakes, but like, these are all these things that are just come with maintenance of a gas powered car. Do you find that the maintenance costs are less or fewer and further between with an electric vehicle?
Yes. So electric vehicles just have fewer moving parts. So there's fewer things to go wrong. So there's no timing belts. Like you said, there's no oil. Like that's a surprise to some people. They're like, wait, what? I don't have to go get oil changes? So yes, the maintenance costs and the fuel costs are part of the reason why when you look at total cost of ownership of owning an electric vehicle, even if the purchase price is a little bit more than a gas car, the total cost of ownership is actually frequently lower with an electric car because you're not paying for those routine maintenance. There's like the belts, there's nothing like that to have to change or that'll break. So yeah.
Awesome. That's good to know. So we always like to thank you so much for this conversation. This has been really eye-opening for me. This is certainly not my wheelhouse, but I do love talking about electric cars because I'm somewhat fascinated by the ways, not only that they work, but the ways in which we are including everyone in those conversations, even folks that don't own electric cars themselves. But we always like to end these conversations on an upside. So we ask this question to all of our guests. What's giving you hope around climate solutions, especially climate solutions in Georgia?
So to me, what gives me hope is that the solutions are here today. It's
Mm.
not like, oh, someday in the future we'll be able to do this. So we just need to continue to align policy and make it happen. Globally, the sales of internal combustion engines peaked around 2017.
Mm.
And electric vehicle sales accounted for 10% of new car purchases in the US last year. So we're starting to, it's going to take some time for the, you know, as people still continue driving gas cars, but we're starting to see that inflection point. EVs could make up almost a third of new car sales by 2027, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance's latest electric vehicle outlook, assuming current policies stay in place. So just raising consciousness about the benefits and more people switching than ever are two things that I'm really hopeful about.
Awesome. That's wonderful. I just paid off my gas powered car, so I'll have it for a while. But we really are looking into, you know, what are the options for not only electric, but also hybrid, which I know there's all kinds of conversations around hybrid vehicles as well. But this has been really helpful for me, and I know helpful for our viewers. Thank you so much to Dory and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, not only for being with us today, for the work that you're doing when it comes to electric transportation. And thank you all for joining the Georgia Drawdown interview series once again. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.